welcome to episode 9 of Birkenwasser Knits. I'm Katrine Birkenwasser, and in this episode I'm going to talk about this Zweig sweater that I'm wearing, and I'll also show you a couple of projects that I'm working on at the moment. But you might be wondering, what on earth am I doing here in the middle of the forest when I'm doing a knitting podcast? But the reason is that we've been taking pictures, and this is actually my neighborhood park. It's an island in downtown Helsinki next to where I live, so we often come here for running, swimming and whatever, but I also like to take pictures here because I really enjoy this nature, and I thought that, well, why not see if I can do also a little bit of video. But let's see, there's a bit of wind, and let's see if you can hear what I'm saying. Okay, but this Zweig sweater is designed by Caitlin Hunter, which I'm sure all of you know, as it's so super popular. I think there's something like 15,000 projects on Ravelry. But yeah, I can see why. It's a really lovely design, and so I also wanted to see what all the fuss is about and knit one for myself. And yeah, so there's some color work to start with. So it's a round yoke sweater. You start from the top with some color work. Then there's some lace in this contrasting color and a bit of color work to follow. And that's not all. So unlike the usual endless boring stockinette stitch part, there's also what is called an X-stitch pattern here for the main body and also for the sleeves. So that means that you will need to pay attention all the way until you have finished. But I think it's a really nice relaxed sweater, so I'm sure I'll be able to wear this a lot now that the sweater weather finally is here. But I also mentioned that I'm gonna talk about some projects that I'm working on, and they are at my home. So let's go there and I'll talk about those projects. Okay, back at home, and let me start by showing you a close-up of this sweater, and then I can show you what I'm working on at the moment. So here's a close-up of the sweater. It has a beautiful, beautiful yoke. You can see the color work that it begins with, and then some beautiful lace pattern and some more color work. And then on the body there's this X-stitch pattern, so you can't just relax and knit. You will need to pay attention and work those little X stitches, but it really gives a nice look for the sweater, so it's worth the extra effort. And the yarn I'm using is Madeline Tosh Dandelion. It's 90% merino and 10% linen yarn, so it's really a nice yarn to work with. And yeah, I think the linen gives it a nice feel, and maybe not, it doesn't feel that warm when you knit with it, but after wearing it for a little bit, it is warm still. And the colorways that I'm using here, this is Cove, and the contrast color is Pink Clay. Here's a project that I recently started. It's going to be a hat, and yeah, I have the ribbing done, so it's not very far yet, but it's a modified hat. It's not my design, but this time I was actually test knitting a cowl design, and I'll tell you more about that later when the pattern is released. But I had some yarn left, so I'm using this Debbie Bliss Donegal luxury tweed yarn, and yeah, I have 2 balls left after finishing the cowl, so I figured that I would just use the same stitch pattern to make a matching hat. So yeah, that's not so far yet, but yeah, I hope it's going to be a nice hat to go with that cowl. And here's a project that I already showed you in a previous episode. I was working on the body of the Humulus sweater by Isabell Kraemer, and now I'm working on the sleeves, and I just wanted to show you. As you can see, I'm working 2 sleeves at a time. It's just so much more convenient to have them both done, so there's no sleeve island when you have them both done, and you won't end up with one lonely sleeve waiting for the other one to be finished. So I'm using magic loop. I usually prefer to work sleeves with DPNs or whatever, socks or, well, hats, whatever I'm doing, that you have the option to use magic loop or DPNs. I like to use DPNs to avoid this pulling of the cable, which I think wastes precious knitting time. But when it's socks or sleeves, then you have to think of which one is worse, pulling the cable or knitting one at a time. So then I often just go with 2 at a time instead of, even if it means that I have to use a circular needle instead of the DPNs. I mean, of course you could use DPNs and just switch between sleeves or between socks, but it just, yeah, it's not as convenient. And I think if you work 2 at a time, then you only need to pull the cable once you've done both sleeves, so there's not so much pulling. But of course then you have this twist of the sleeves, and yeah, but then when you turn it, it's gonna go the other way. And yeah, this is gonna make a nice sweater for the fall. So if I just finish it before the cold weather comes, I'm sure I'm gonna love wearing this. Now here is a gorgeous pile of yarn. This is merino silk from Lanitium x Machina, and the colorway, it's just amazing. It's like this deep blue green shade. It's called Davy Jones, and the light gray is called Haze. So this is going to be another collaboration with Lanitium x Machina, and yeah, it looks like a sweater quantity, and as you can see, there's a contrast color, so there's going to be some color work as well. So stay tuned for more. I'm really looking forward to winding this yarn and starting to swatch, and well, I already know what it's going to be, so super excited to get started. So those were a couple of projects that I have going on, and that lovely yarn that's going to be a project soon. And then I have something else. This is what I showed you last week. So it's the Tour de Sock State 6 sock. And yeah, the deadline is today. Today is Thursday, so this is my first sock. Looks like I'm going to finish one sock, but not both of them. But it's a nice pattern, it's interesting to knit, so I'm sure I'll finish this one of these days. And then there's also a new design that I've showed you already. It's this mosaic cable yoke sweater. I have finished knitting it, so there's some contrast color ribbing both at the hem and at the sleeves, and then it's your regular round yoke sweater. But as soon as I finish waving in ends and block this and take some pictures and do some pattern polishing, pattern writing, I will be posting a testing call for this one. So if you are interested in test knitting, please sign up for the earburn list for test knitters in my Ravelry group, and I'll earburn you when the testing call is up. or just join my Ravelry group and keep an eye on when the testing call comes out. So that's something that's also coming up. But that's all for today, and in the next episode I'm going to talk about test knitting more, so please stay tuned for the next episode. Bye!